A friend of mine, Jim Shields, wrote a book back in the day called Board Meetings, but it's based on this idea he calls 18 summers. And that's you've got 18 summers with your kids, if you're lucky, maybe 16. And it's not like 16 years or 16 this, it's 16 summer times before they want to maybe stop spending time with you, or they get boyfriends or girlfriends, or they want to travel, or they want to do stuff, or maybe they're not involved in the same stuff you are. And I always keep that in the back of my mind. And I think BMX feels like it can if he keeps at it, of course, it can supersede that 18 summers. Like we could be old and he could still be racing, whether competitively or for fun. And I'm still willing to get out on that track and give it a go. And I mean, I trade anything for more time with my kids. And if this is an opportunity for me to be able to do that, then hell, I'll buy the bike and I'll change the pedals and I'll buy the gear and I'll do my best and I'll come compete and finish dead last every time just to be able to do it. Because I mean, you don't get those years back and you don't get that time back. And so if I can build memories with them, then I'm going to do it. And BMX is a beautiful way to be able to do that.
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode.
Yeah, let's go.
Right on. All right. Well, Nic, this is a slightly different conversation than any other one that I've had on the podcast to date, but I love it because, and I'm excited about this because you are very new to the sport of BMX. And when I say very new, Nic, how long have you been racing BMX?
So I've officially had one race. I got my bike about 3-ish or so weeks ago. And I've been to probably like 3 or 4 open track practices and one official race so far.
Perfect. So you're nearly a seasoned veteran.
That's right.
But really the conversation that I wanted to talk about was because at some point you saw BMX, something brought BMX into a spotlight of sorts for you. Yeah. And you decided to jump in and give it a try. But more than anything, it was your child that got into it. And then they brought you in. So and your background is not in BMX. You actually,
no,
I know of you from the marketing space and as a coach and doing Facebook ads and things like that. But Nic, will you start by giving a quick introduction, a quick bio of who you are, and then we'll talk about how you got into BMX.
Oh, okay. Well, quick bio, that's tricky.
It doesn't have to be quick. I don't know. A bio of who you are.
A bio. Well, let's think about that. About 20-ish or so years ago, I was introduced to the platform called Facebook, in the context of like, hey, there's a social media platform, everybody's on it, everyone's doing all this stuff on it. And I came at it from the thought of marketing because, I'm officially unemployable. I can't get a real job anywhere, mostly because I have authority issues. So for as long as I remember, I mean, even my parents were entrepreneurs for a certain degree. They got into some financial trouble really early on. And so from, gosh, as long as I can remember, 15, 16 years old, I was almost forced, not by them, but by the situation, to be the primary breadwinner for my family. I was an only child. I had to figure out how to pay the bills. My father was ill, in and out of hospital a lot. My mother was an immigrant, couldn't speak English well, so couldn't get a normal job. After my dad's third stroke, he ended up they had to give up their little small family business. And so here I am, 16, 17, having to figure that out. Now that obviously led me down a path of a lot of dumb decisions and wasting a lot of time and money. But through the process, I learned sales. And through the sales process, I learned this idea of like human psychology and marketing and all this. And I thought, like the person at the time that I was following told me create a product, sell it on the internet. I'm like, seems easy enough. So I created a product and I tried to figure out how am I going to sell this on the internet. I came across Facebook. At that point, they just introduced their ads platform as, hey, you can like buy eyeballs to see your stuff. And if you do that well enough, people will buy your stuff. I was like, seems simple enough. So put out some ads, had people start buying things. One thing led to another. That ended up turning into a consultancy. The consultancy also added an agency leg. So we were running ads for some of the most well-known people in the space. We were coaching some people and literally been doing that for about 20 years. But my real passion throughout the whole process and why I was interested in marketing was more so around the idea of human behavior. Like, why do people do things that they do? Marketing being one of them. Like, if you present someone with an opportunity a certain way, why do some people buy and why do they not? So my mind the whole time had been in the space of human performance. Why do people take actions the certain ways they do? And so secretly, it's about 4 years ago, I started kind of building a little bit of a brand in the, let's just call it the personal development space, through the mix of therapeutic psychedelics and brain stuff and neuroplasticity and working with doctors. And more recently, we just start creating a documentary film, a feature film, full-length documentary around the idea and human performance and why people do what they do, and try to understand how we can show up best in the world as fathers, as sons, as business partners, as employees, as employers. And so, yeah, it's been quite a bit of a journey. Still some marketing in there, now some human performance, and we're seeing where the world will take us.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just remember, I actually have it with me, but I remember I was working with a guy who gave me your book, Give.
Right.
And that was literally my first introduction to you, was through a guy named Jeff Latham. And
Yep.
we ended up, I ended up doing some videography and some social media and did some marketing for him. And I will say that Jeff has been one of the most encouraging humans in my life.
Yeah, he's a great dude.
He has been so helpful to me. And so, I mean, the connections that he's made, and he was the connection for this conversation right now. But
right.
Anyway, so there's that. And then, Nick, how did you get into the sport of BMX?
So I got to be honest with you. And some of your guests might not like, or fans might not like this right at first. So look, I was born and raised in Toronto for most of my life. It wasn't until about 4 years ago that I came out to the West Coast, and I now live in beautiful Kelowna, British Columbia, which, by the way, we just had the Firestorm Nationals here last weekend, which was awesome, except the weather wasn't great. But prior to that, like, I was like head down city slicker kind of guy. So I didn't know anything about really motorsports at all. I never rode a dirt bike. I never rode a mountain bike for that matter. I mean, I had a two-wheeler when I was a kid, but that was about it. And so when someone said BMX, my understanding of it was like the guys who do tricks with the pegs that stick out of the wheels. And so I didn't think anything of it. And my son, who is now 7, at that time was 6, his friend was like, hey, we do BMX at the local Kelowna BMX park. Do you want to tag along? Like, it's an open night. Friends can invite friends. And so I asked my son, do you want to do it? And he said, sure. He was a little nervous. He didn't know what he was getting into. We didn't even know what BMX bikes were, to be honest. We went there and they give us a loaner bike, a little micro mini at the time, or a mini. And it had these like ultra thin wheels. And I'm like, how are you supposed to ride over bumps with wheels this thin? None of it made sense to me. But he went and he had a good time and his friend did it. And so I said, hey, buddy, do you want to join? Like, practices on Mondays and races on Wednesdays. And at that time, actually, I think he started half track. So we're just like, hey, do you want to do this? You don't have to do the big loud gates. Don't worry about it. You can just do the half track. Like, let's give this a go. And he was 6, and technically half track ends at 5, but they made an exception for him. And the weird turn of events was his buddy stopped showing up, but he kept going. And I remember specifically that first half track race, he's riding, he smashes his face, like things are flying everywhere. And I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be the end of it. Like, if it's first race, he's not going to want to do it. He's already nervous. But I said, do you want to do it again, bud? And he said, sure. So he rode the second go at it. His pedal flew off in the middle of the second race. And so he somehow managed to like strider it over to finish it. And I'm like, oh, I guess he kind of wants to do this. And so This was the end of last season. I think he had 3 or 4 races total, wasn't doing very well, was trying to figure the whole thing out, you know. And I think the last race of last season, they really encouraged him because he's a 6-year old to try full track. And so there I was at the gates holding his wheel between my legs, which I'm not allowed to do as because he's 6 years old, but they made the exception. And and he did it. And then like the season came to an end, and we really didn't think anything of it. Fast forward through the winter, and now like fall, winter, and then spring was coming, and Kelowna BMX local bike club said, hey, we've got I wish I remember his full name, but Tori, who's an Olympian, he was this great BMXer. He's coming to hold a clinic. Yeah, that's it. Okay, great, thank you. He's coming, he's going to do a clinic. You should all come. So I asked my son, hey man, do you want to give this a go? And he was a little bit nervous. And he's like, well, will other novice kids be there? Will I be the youngest? Will I be the worst? And like all this stuff is going through his head. And I said, well, let me reach out and find out. And they said, you know what? He's great with novices. Tori's great with novices. He'll be fine. Just come right out. So he came out, did the clinic. It was a novice intermediate clinic, and something just clicked. And he fell in love with the sport, and he was learning lots of stuff, and he's really encouraged by Tori. And the weekend, so this was before the season even started. The weekend after, or the week after, was his first race. He raced and he won. And then I think for a young kid, just when you win and you're applying what you're learning, happened, he won. And so he came back, practiced on Monday, next race, won again. Practice again, came back next week, Monday, Wednesday, won again. And I was like, oh, okay. And then he turns to me and he says, Dad, can you race with me? And at this point, I'm like, I don't think so, man. Like, because I'm looking at Kelowna is a small enough town where, the motos I would race with are 40 plus, but these guys have been BMXing since they were 16. Like, there's no novice category here. It's the guys who are flying through the track and they're jumping over all the tabletops. And then there would be me, who's never ridden a BMX bike before. So at first I kind of push it off. I was like, no, dude, I don't think so, but I'll continue to support you. And he's like, oh, okay. And then the next week passes as, Dad, can you BMX race? And at this point, like, I got the message. I'm like, he wants me to do it. I'm like, I'm here anyways, and I'll do anything to spend more time with him. So I went out, and here's the part, Jay. I went on Facebook Marketplace, and I bought a BMX bike. And I'm like, and I didn't know what I was looking for, to be honest. I think I got ripped off. I bought like this fancy pants, custom Haro blackout edition, and it looked cool, and it was gold and black. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to this is it. That's kind of my personality. I'm going to go all in. So I bring it out on Monday, and the guys look at it and they're like, Nick, you can't race with that bike. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, those are 20-inch wheels, and most of us are riding cruisers. And I didn't know what the hell that was. I'm like, so they're like, you have a choice. You can ride with us old farts, but you'll need to get a cruiser, or you can ride with the 18-year-old young bucks with that bike that you just bought. So I was like, you certainly don't want to ride with the 18-year-old young bucks. I want to ride with the old guys, even though they're flying through the track. So I oh God. So I had to go out, find another bike, ended up buying a 24-inch cruiser, and then, started practicing. And then, one thing led to another, and had my first race a couple of weeks ago. I finished dead last by a mile. My son was finishing first as well. But yeah, the community's been awesome. Spending time with my son is awesome. And now we have this common thing that we can share. So that's my little foray into BMX bike racing.
I love that. I mean, there are so many pieces of that conversation that I love, like the fact that you hadn't heard about it and weren't familiar. Right. Is a conversation that we talk about all the time, is that people just don't know that you exist. And as a sport, I'll tell you a little bit of my background and why we started doing this was because coming from a marketing background and being a business consultant, and I took a 20-year break. I raced from the time that I was 6 until I was 11. And then I stopped racing. And then I came back and I brought my kids into it, introduced them, immediately started seeing the things that them learning things. And my wife saying, oh, that's why you do X. That's why you
Mm.
do Y. That's why you do Z.
Mm.
So I started seeing all the things that BMX had taught me as a kid. And
Got it.
then it had contributed to my life in so many ways. But I also started noticing that, like, where are all the people? And I started hearing about
Mm.
turf wars from one track to another, and them
Oh, no kidding.
saying, yeah, like being very territorial. We're not going to send you the people. Now,
Oh, wow.
by being at your track, is like there are a chunk of people, there are core people, but percentage wise, compared to the number of people available in your community, it's probably not a monumental amount. So
Correct.
there are more people out there, and there are people just like you who live there who don't know about it.
Right. 100%.
And so I started realizing, like, oh man, what if I could come in and what if I could provide some coaching? And so I started providing coaching to track operators in order to help them better market their tracks, and coming in as a kind of a consultant, having
Right.
that outside perspective and going, here, like, this is something that might be missing. This is my wife talks a lot about signage, and
Mm.
it's very valuable because there are a lot of tracks that are missing signage.
Sure.
But what you are describing is coming in and being able to do something you noticed with your son. And BMX is a sport where I would assume that starting at the bottom is a little bit tougher for you, being somebody that goes all in and wants to do it all right now. But it is something that people can come in and you can compete, quote unquote, and not be competitive at all. And you're just riding the track because you and your son are on the same track at the same time doing the same activity.
Yeah.
And you can have a great time, or you can go out to win and have a great time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that, because it very much is true. Like, I came in with no expectations on the race side of things, right? I was just like, if I can get through a race and not hurt myself, consider that a win. Like, let's just, let's consider that a win. The other benefit, though, that I was a side project. Like, I thought I was going to just spend time with my son and that was it. I gotta say, though, that the BMX community, and I don't know if this is nationwide, I don't know if this is local, I don't know, but the BMX community is just awesome. Like, some of my, I mean, again, I've only been doing it for a little time, although I've been going to the track for a long time. Make some great friends now that we hang out outside the BMX community. Everyone is so helpful and uplifting. And again, I don't know if this is true just for our track, but like, everyone was willing to spend the extra time with me. I mean, the first time I went out with my bike, my handlebars were too low, and they're like, just come here, let me like fix the bars for you. And so what started as just a family thing for me and my son to hang out turned into like even a great just community thing for me. And the people are great. There's no judgment anywhere. I know, well, here's my secret plan, Jay, just to be honest with you. I'm now recruiting, I'm trying to, a bunch of the dads who just stand by on the sidelines and watch. I'm recruiting all them, and I'm like, guys, like, I did it. Why don't we start a novice class? Because I don't want to go up against these experts anyways. Like, why don't we start an old dudes novice class so we can all just kind of like have fun? And they're thinking about it, and I might get, 2 or 3 people so we can have our own little moto here. But yeah, I mean, it's I came in with no expectations. And my personality tells me maybe down the road, I might try to get a little more competitive. Although watching the Nationals scared me a little bit. But outside of that, I had that option but at the end of the day, it's just, I can have fun. I can do it on my own terms. I can hang out with great people and have some great time with my son. So overall, just a cool experience.
I love that. And hearing that amplified, hearing you talked about the friendship, and there are so many people that will talk again and again and again about the friendship in BMX. And I tell people all the time that don't know what BMX is, exactly what you just said, is that the community and the camaraderie is almost unlike any other sport. And I will tell you that I would be willing to bet, and probably 90% of the time this is true. You could go to California, you could go to Toronto, you could go back to Toronto, you could go to New York. You go to Florida, you meet somebody, start talking to somebody you've never met, and you mention BMX. And I would say that 9 times out of 10, they would be willing to let you sleep at their house that day.
Wow. Wow.
And it's a very weird and very cool community in that way. And I mean, there's conversations about the BMX brotherhood and,
Right.
like just the community, the core within BMX and the event that I just got back from, that it's called Dirty Fest. And there's a few of these old school BMX races around the country.
Mm,
And they're people that were, it's really cool because you get to meet the pros that started BMX, that
that's cool.
brought BMX into a spotlight, and the people that created, like I've done an interview with the guy that did created the magazine that brought BMX into a spotlight and turned these
Wow.
athletes into superheroes.
Wow.
And there aren't a lot of sports where you can meet the founders of a sport.
Sure.
But even on another note is these people are coming together. There were 3,500 people, and a lot of these people were friendships that had formed 40 years ago,
Sure.
and they see each other once every 5, 10, now every year, but hadn't seen each other in a very long time.
Right.
And so anyway, you amplifying that point of the sport is really cool from an outside perspective to hear.
Yeah. The friendships and like, again, and I thought this was just go like an East Coast, West Coast thing because I came from the East Coast in a busy city where everyone keeps their head down and nobody makes eye contact. And like you come out to the West Coast and everyone's more friendly. I like, the first, at first when we started, I thought, oh, my son's just going to run local tracks, Wednesday night racing. That's it. I'm not going to drive for him. He's 7 years old. I'm not going to drive for him to race BMX. And then, provincial qualifiers came up. And provincial qualifiers are, at least here, they were 4 races in 2 days in 4 cities. So we drove 2.5 hours to Kamloops. We ran provincial qualifiers #1. We wrapped up, jumped in the car, drove another 2 hours to Vernon to run provincial qualifiers race #2. Then we slept. We got home late at night. Then we slept. And then the next day was Kelowna, which was local, and then Penticton, which is about an hour and a half away. So 4 provincial qualifying races in 2 days. First, I never thought I would do that, by the way. I was like, this is, he's 7 years old. But we just had such a great time. And it was the first time experiencing another track. And what is that like? And then you learn, oh, not all tracks are made of the same material. Then you learn that, oh, everyone does staging differently. Oh, and I remember like I thought I was the best parent. I was all prepared. I packed my backpack and its water bottle and some snacks. And like I show up to the first track and people got tents pitched and they got their wagons and they got their trailers and their bikes are hanging on racks. And I'm like, oh, shoot. I thought I had it all dialed in with my little backpack and water bottle. But again, you're there and everyone's helpful and like a tire blew and everyone, will help you fix and change the tube for your next race. And all of a sudden, like some of it was chaos. I remember standing in line with my son because he was nervous and he was getting staged and whatever. And one of the guys looks at me and says, "Are you racing?" I'm like, "No, I'm just a parent." And they're like, "Well, can you help with staging?" I'm like, "I don't even know what that means." But sure. So next thing you know, like I ended up doing staging at all 4 of the races and like, but again, the point is everyone was just so accommodating and helpful and everyone appreciated everyone else and was there. And so like, we still got a ton to learn. But if it wasn't for the BMX community, like I wouldn't have wanted to go back. I wouldn't have decided to do the nationals here in Kelowna. And we're already talking about going to Langley, which is in Vancouver for the provincial finals, and then Chilliwack's the big national. Like we're already talking about all this. And again, you asked me this, I don't know, 6-8 months ago. I would think you're out of your mind, and I have no idea what you're talking about. So it's a great community.
Yeah, it's very unique in that way, and it's cool the area that you're at. So Langley was my favorite track growing up.
Oh, no kidding.
And yeah, so I grew up just an hour south in Burlington, Washington. And that we would go up every Wednesday, every Saturday, and every Sunday. We would go to Langley.
Wow.
And Yeah, a lot of traveling. Looking back on that, that was a lot of racing.
Yeah.
But anyway, Langley is still one of my, I think some of my best memories, and probably some of my best skill building came from racing at Langley.
Oh, very cool.
And
Yeah, I think they do a good job because now that he's raced his 4 provincial qualifiers, if he races Langley, he gets a provincial plate, like similar to state plate. And that's enough motivation for him to be like, all right, let's go. So we're gonna go try and get a plate in Langley at the end of September.
that's awesome. So I'm guessing it sounds like your son is pretty competitive on his own. Um, I mean, based on that, like maybe not so
Yeah,
much.
well, now that you bring, like, I never thought about this, but now that you brought it up, early in his life, he's a very, very, very shy kid. And so any form of competition is kind of confrontational because, like, you've got to go up against other people. And that worried him. So we started hitting him like team sports. So at least, like, it's not all on you. And early on, when he was younger, he tried jujitsu and he hated it. He didn't like the confrontation. And then he joined BMX. Yeah, and then something switched in him. Like, maybe it's the camaraderie. Maybe it's that you can be both competitive and friends at the same time. Or when you're racing, you race to win. But as soon as you're done the race, everyone's giving fist bumps, no matter what place you've come in. Like, even that psychology was beautiful to see at the end of the race, on the finish line, everybody stops, everyone's fist bumping everybody. And so I think BMX actually brought a little more of that out in him, even though it's an individual sport, whereas he didn't maybe have it before. So that's actually a great takeaway that I'm thinking about here, where it's bringing out parts of him that that kind of was lying dormant prior.
That's really neat. Yeah, I would have guessed. I mean, you described the way that he was fairly timid going out onto the bike and getting out
Yes.
onto the track.
Yes.
And so then even as I asked, because it sounds competitive, like him having a shot at winning a plate, and he's like, let's go get it. And,
Yeah.
so then those are, I mean, not quite polar opposites, but they're pretty opposite
They
sides
are.
of that
Yeah, yeah.
spectrum.
Yeah.
And anyway, I love seeing the things. And I wanted to ask you about other things that you had seen that he's developed as a result of BMX, because I think that BMX, there are so many valuable takeaways. And so anyway, I'm curious what you've seen through the
Well,
sport.
yeah, or off the top, like, there's a level, when you have young kids and you try to get them in a whole bunch of sports and whatever to see what sticks, and then they like something a little bit and then they fall off and they're like, I don't like it anymore. And you're like, dude, I paid for the whole season and now you don't want to do it anymore. Like, there was a lot of that. So we had an agreement with our kids that whatever you start, you just have to finish until the end of the whatever it is that we signed you up for. BMX became the thing he does. And now, because of it, like, there's a level of commitment there that I didn't see prior with other things. So, like, when Mondays roll around, it's like, all right, Dad, like, get ready. We want to be there 15 minutes early so we can get all set and ready so that when practice starts, I'm ready. And Wednesdays are race nights and we don't miss, like, there's a commitment. And then even in between, he'll ask, can we go to the track and practice? And he's just committed with getting his stuff organized in his bag and all his gear and making sure his tires are pumped to the right pressures. Like, it has brought out, and again, I don't know if this is just because he's passionate about it, but it has brought out a level of commitment, which is really nice to see in young people. Because it's so easy to just be like flippy about everything and say, I'll try it, or I don't like this. But he's committed to seeing this through to the end, whatever the end is.
At this time, I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our 2025 sponsors who are helping us make the mission of BMX Breakthrough happen, which is to grow the sport at a local level. These sponsors, you can find more about them in the description, and then you can use their coupon codes. And you may be saying, I don't need a coupon code, but I would ask you, please use that coupon code as a way to help us all track what we're doing together. It helps them, it helps us, it helps everyone. So at our gold level, we have Box, Mongoose, and Pro Lids. At the silver level, we have Dan's Comp, LRC, and Pro Start. And at the bronze level, we have Command Aviation, Danger Snacks, Fly Racing, Gear Blocks, Justin Shepard Title Examiner, Lincoln Park BMX, Sign Dog Northwest, Sound Cedar Lumber, and Tasco. Once again, you can follow the links in our description to find out more about these phenomenal brands. You can find the coupon codes for some of them available there. And thank you so much to our 2025 sponsors. Now back to our episode.
Another good example of this is just learning like that things don't always go your way. So provincial qualifiers, for example, he won all of his races in Kamloops. He won all of his races in the second place. I forgot the order of it. Third race, he shows up. He won his first race, and the second race, he was out in the front. He went over a tabletop, didn't land his top wheel straight. It landed curved. Obviously, everyone knows what that means. You flip over your bars, and he ate shit pretty bad, caused a big commotion, came in last in that race. And it was like he was just on this roll up until this point where his identity was like, I win BMX races. And so when he all of a sudden crashes, and now he had to, he finished he went across the finish line. But when all of a sudden he lost, and not just lost, but came in last, it was interesting for me to just sit back and like, so what are you going to do? Right? Are you going to go and cry in a corner? And that's okay. If you need to let that out, that's cool. But like, this is now going to really test, who are you? Is your identity wrapped up in a winner? Are you, is your identity wrapped up in like, no, I'm going to come back and do this again? Like, where do you stand with all this? And he said, no, he came back, and then we went to the fourth one and dusted himself off, and he won at the fourth race, and he was making some progress. And then again, even here at Firestorm Nationals, he entered as a novice because that's what he was doing. And day 2, if he won that race, which we had no expectations of because we just didn't know, but that would be his 10th win, which would mean he'd graduated into intermediate. So he won, he graduated intermediate. So that means on day 3, now he's racing a whole ton of new people that are a whole ton better than him, that like, and he's not used to racing, handlebar to handlebar at higher speeds now, because prior he'd just lead the race and he'd be a few meters ahead of them and he wouldn't be in the corners and whatnot. In the first moto, I mean, he's handlebar to handlebar, he's elbow to elbow, he's going into a corner and nobody fell, but like, it's a whole new category now. So in that qualifier, he came in second, he transferred over to the mains. He rode mains and he ended up finishing 5th. And I'm like, good job, bud. Our goal was just to make it into mains. How do you feel about all that? And you could see, going back to that commitment and that determination, he goes, I want to come back next year as an expert, and I want to compete. And so like, all right, then that means we're going to have to learn, because these kids in this class are faster than you. They're better. They've been doing this longer. So we've got to build out a path to get there. And he's like, I'm determined to do it. So it's just on so many different levels. It's challenging who he is. It's putting obstacles in front of him to say like, are you willing to overcome those obstacles? And as a result, like fundamentally, he's becoming a different kid, like a more accomplished, more mature child, which is really nice to see.
That's really cool. It's fun to watch. Yeah, like I've said, it's fun to watch their development. And sometimes as a parent, you just get to watch their personalities come to fruition. Yeah. And like you start seeing things and you're like, oh, you're getting some humor, and you're getting getting a little bit more serious, or whatever the case may be. And but to see some of those things, and I know I've talked about BMX teaching kids. I mean, immediately you have to learn how to lose, but then you get to a certain point where I'm sure he's been learning this too. You have to learn how to win well, and to not be the sore winner at the end that just goes off and disappears. I mean, that's the whole thing that you described of fist bumping at the end is a huge camaraderie piece. Well, if you become the winner that just leaves and doesn't do that, you don't want to do that. Like,
right.
But yeah, hearing some of those conversations and some of those ideas of, having to work through it, hearing the commitment that it has created. And it sounds like it's also created a bit of, I mean, he's only 7, but created some organization of, Dad, we need to go. I want to be there early. I want to be prepared. I want to, which as an entrepreneur is, I mean, I'm sure there are certainly skills that you're like, oh man, this is so exciting.
And this is not going to mean much to like some of the listeners or the viewers of this, but just for context, when we moved first to Kelowna, um, he was an extremely shy, timid kid. So much so that when he was in preschool, we got a call from the teacher. Now we didn't know this was happening, but we got a call from the teacher asking if he knew how to speak because he would never even talk in school. And we're like, what do you mean? He didn't know how to talk. Like at home, he's a chatterbox, but he was very socially timid. And then, they had fire drills in school, and you were required to, when we went outside or whatever, that the teacher would call your name and say, like, Levine, are you here? And you would have to respond present, but he wouldn't even say present. Like he was too timid to do that. And so I bring that up only to mention, again, for the viewers, it might not mean like a big deal, but for us to see who this child has become, right? It's just this weekend. I know we're talking a lot about the weekend, but the Firestorm Nationals here, he brought a football and he was now a kid arranging, in between races amongst all the other 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds to play like little football games in the field while they were waiting for stuff. Like this would not be him not that long ago. So some of the skills he's developing as a human is awesome, and potential entrepreneur, like I take great pride in. But just to see who this kid as an individual has become, and the BMX has played a huge role in that. I can't even put to words. This is a guy from, again, it's a kid who was too timid to say a word to now organizing football things in the middle of a BMX national competition to make new friends. It's just, he's come a long, long way.
I love that. And one of the things that I noticed immediately, and probably the one that tipped me over the edge to realizing how valuable BMX was, is, and I mean, some people have heard me tell this story before, but when I don't remember seeing age as a reason that I couldn't be friends with somebody. And as a kid, my friends were, well, I guess as a teenager, my friends were often older than me. And even to this point, like in my life, where I kept thinking like, oh, as I get older, I'll have friends that are closer to my age. And I never consciously thought it was a problem, but no, I've always had friends that are a bit older than me.
Right.
And I've always spent time with people. When I was 17, one of my really good friends was 34. And so I've always related to people, and I've always been able to speak to people on a level that people that were older than me. So
Sure.
We were in Salt Lake City and I think it's called South Jordan. And there's a town down there. There's a BMX track called Rad Canyon. And we had stopped through, and they ended up offering for us to stay the night to park the trailer there overnight. We were passing through. We had driven all day to get there, made the trip. We barely made it in time to race. The track operator knew that we were coming. I'd gotten a hold of him on Instagram. Wow. And we hadn't really talked to him. He had just like gotten us number plates. He had gotten us, we hadn't even gotten those at this point. And we end up, after the race, he left the lights on and said, "You can go ride." And I said, "Okay, well, you don't have to do that." And he goes, "No, you guys are here. You're from out of town. You should just ride."
Wow.
So my daughter, she's riding. She comes over and she goes, "Dad, will you ride with me?" And I think she's 5 years old at the time. And I said, "Kiddo, I'd love to, but your brother is falling asleep. I need to get the trailer set up so that he can go to bed." She goes, "Okay." So she goes over to this track operator who she had talked to maybe 2 minutes total. And he is, I would say, like 40 years old, and goes over and says, "Hey, do you have your bike?" He said, "I do." She goes, "Do you want to race me?" And he goes, "I would love to." So he took it. So he got his bike out. She went and rode some laps. He ended up having to get stuff ready and head home. But she goes, "Dad, I beat him 3 times."
I love it.
But that was the moment where I realized that it was because of BMX. I had a hero that I looked up to who was in the Northwest Washington area, and he became my BMX mentor. And he was my dad's age. But I remember going to school and talking about my friend Todd. I would refer to my friend Todd, and I never thought of him as an elder or a superior. He was on my level. And I think that's where BMX is different, because in ball sports, if you're older than me, you're a coach or you're
Sure.
a parent.
Right. Right.
You are an authority figure. In BMX, your son can line up next to me,
Right.
and for practice, he could look over and go, "You want to race me?" And
Yeah.
I could race him, and we are on a very similar level. And there may be an opportunity, for him to go, "Oh, like, I want to ask that guy
Yeah.
a question or something." But either way, it's not an immediate authority. It's opened the door for him to talk to someone who's older than him in any case.
You bring up a memory that I had on my first race. So we lined up in a motos. At this point, I'm riding cruiser class, obviously with the old guys. But there was a 7-year-old expert who rode in his division and decided that he also wanted to ride in cruiser class. But in our local race, there's no other 7-year-olds riding cruisers. The only riding cruisers are us old farts. So it was almost the same thing. I mean, it's race night. He lines up. I look over at the lane, and it's a 7-year-old, and he's a great kid, but like fun personality. So he looks over at me. He's like, "I'm gonna beat you," like just talking smack at me at the gates, and I'm like, "You probably will. I'm having a hard time even balancing on this damn bike at the gates." We win every race, but it's a great point. Like in an actual scenario, I am beside a 7-year-old who's the same as my son, and we're having a conversation, and we're actually competing against each other. And it was, I mean, again, it was, we're not seeing age, we're not seeing anything. We're just like, hey, we're two BMXers. We're not one better than the other. We're both competitors. Well, I try to be a competitor, but we're both competitors in the same sport. And it was really actually a cool experience.
Yeah, and there's a good chance that he will remember that.
Hmm.
And you're remembering it in a way but it's probably different from the way that he'll remember that, because
Sure.
he'll look back and be like, "Oh man, remember when I, talked to that guy?" He may not, but like, even my dad this last week went racing, because my dad still races,
Wow.
which is super fun. And anyway, so he went racing at a track in Mount Vernon, Washington, and uh, I ended up, he told me, he texted me afterwards, and he's like, "This is what happened for 20 inch." And then I raced cruiser, and I
You
raced
did both.
against, he raced against not an 8-year-old girl and an 11-year-old girl.
Nice.
And he said I got third. And,
Yeah. I love it.
and I said, "Nice. Did they beat you, or what was the game here?" And he goes, "I'll never tell." And
Yeah.
anyway, and then I saw a post on Facebook, I think it was 2 days ago, and somebody just said, "I was thinking about our time at Bakerview BMX and the girls that went out there." And she talked this whole story about how her daughter had lined up next to my dad. And on the way home, she said, "Mom, I got second, and it made me better." And
Hmm.
she knew that he was like slowing down a little bit and not
Sure.
going all the way. But what she recognized was the effort that he had made to help her get better. And anyway, so she tagged me in it and said, "Your dad's really awesome." And
Oh,
that
I
was
love that.
really cool to hear and to see. But yeah, it's just really amazing, like some of the things that kids can learn. And it's fun to hear, even at this point in your journey, in your son's journey, what is being remembered
Yeah.
from
I
this.
mean, I'm learning tons. Um, but I also just saying that memory. I mean, I was behind this kid because he was flying. I mean, a damn 7-year-old. I don't know how they do this. He was flying, and I remember him. I mean, being just a little bit in front of me, but approaches a tabletop and just is flying. I almost fell off my bike because I was admiring his airtime. I was like, "What?" And I yelled really loud. I'm like, his name's Parker. I'm like, "Dude, that was awesome." And I'm like, "You almost made me fail." And he's like laughing at me, and he's just going doing his thing. But it's true. Like it's both sides are learning something and making great memories. And I think that's pretty special because, sometimes you think, oh, it's the older person imparting knowledge to the younger or whatever. But it really felt like both people, in my case anyways, both people were having a good time and learning something and having their own little takeaways from it.
Yeah. Well, and for a kid, there aren't a whole lot of situations where a kid necessarily feels like they are being able to empower an adult or
Sure, yeah,
to teach an adult.
sure.
And I think it's really cool. It's like there are people at the track that my dad will go and ride with. And actually there was a guy, a kid at the, I don't, shouldn't call him a kid anymore. He's a teenager. But his name is Jamie Halls. He was just up at the Kelowna National.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and anyway, he's phenomenal. And I was talking to my dad and I said, "Oh, you should go and talk to Jamie about giving you some pointers." And I think Jamie's 14 or 15.
Wow.
And anyway, my dad's like, "I've got lots to learn from him. Like he can teach
Yeah.
me all sorts of things." And the reality is that it kind of gives, I mean, within whatever situation that you're in, I think sometimes there's a mentor role, and then there becomes a like a reverse mentor role where you're
Yeah,
learning
sure.
from somebody in a different way. And I think BMX kind of provides that opportunity for these kids to, give lessons and give pointers and give hints. I mean, I was racing in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I was racing against this kid. His name's Joshua, and anyway, fast kid. And I think he was 12 or 13 at the time.
Wow.
And I was racing against him, and he made a joke. I beat him, but barely. Like this
Yeah.
was 2 years ago, barely beat him. And he like made a joke, I think like you couldn't let me win, or you're not gonna let a kid win or beat you or something. And I said, I don't have to. You're about to do it on your own.
Right.
like,
Right. Yeah,
like this,
actually, it's a good point. Like there are times even in our Monday practices where I'll just pull a kid aside and say, "Hey, can you show me what you did there?" Or like, "How do I hold my handlebars properly?" Or like even at the gates, I how's a hell of a time balancing on those damn gates. So I'm like, I'd look at the kid beside me and for no other reason than to actually learn. But I was like, "Oh, where should my feet be? And am I standing up straight enough or whatever?" And yeah, to allow, now that you're saying this, I wasn't consciously aware of this, but to allow a younger person the opportunity to teach an older person something. Um, it felt very empowering for them. And honestly, I have nothing to offer and only stuff to learn from these kids. So I take every opportunity I can to try and draw some knowledge from them.
that's fun. Yeah, it's got its own, the sport just has so many unique opportunities that I just
Yeah.
don't, I haven't found. And that's the reason why I'm so adamant about being able to put together, um, be able to do what I do and
Yeah.
really want to help grow the sport at a local level and find a way to get more kids on bikes and more families like yours aware of
Yeah.
this sport that exists.
I'm a big fan. I tell all my friends, and of course, not all of them are interested in BMX or whatever, but I'm a big fan of like, if you can get your kid involved, there's so much learning for the kid to just be a part of it. For everything we talked about today, the community, the commitment, the learning, the getting off and dusting yourself and doing all that. But the unexpected benefit for me was like, there aren't too many sports I feel like you can do with your kids, right? If they play team soccer, like I can go out and cheer and I can help out in practice, or they play hockey or whatever, but I can't be on the field of play with them in actual competition or whatever. This is one of those sports. And so that's what makes it really special, where I would, again, you rewind you rewind 2 months, and I would have never thought myself that I would own a BMX bike and I would race and I would do all this stuff. Frankly, I thought it was, I mean, the joke I make is the first time I did a lap of the track, I could only go full tilt for maybe half the track before I was exhausted. I'm like, I can't do this. I don't know how these kids are doing that. And one of the track operators were like, I think every parent of every BMX kid needs to come out on the field and do at least one lap, because they'll stop yelling at their kids to pedal harder. Like they'll get a real sense of what these kids are actually doing. And yeah, for me, ever since then, I never yelled at my kid to do anything for that matter. I was like, you just go do you. I know what this is like, and it's way harder than anyone thinks. But yeah, to be able to participate, like fully participate in something that your kid gets to do, there's not many opportunities like that. And a friend of mine, Jim Shields, wrote a book back in the day called Board Meetings, but it's based on this idea he calls 18 summers. And that's you've got 18 summers with your kids, if you're lucky, maybe 16. And it's not like 16 years or 16 this, it's 16 summer times before they want to maybe stop spending time with you, or they get boyfriends or girlfriends, or they want to travel, or they want to do stuff, or maybe they're not involved in the same stuff you are. And I always keep that in the back of my mind. And I think BMX feels like it can if he keeps at it, of course, it can supersede that 18 summers. Like we could be old and he could still be racing, whether competitively or for fun. And I'm still willing to get out on that track and give it a go. And I mean, I trade anything for more time with my kids. And if this is an opportunity for me to be able to do that, then hell, I'll buy the bike and I'll change the pedals and I'll buy the gear and I'll do my best and I'll come compete and finish dead last every time just to be able to do it. Because I mean, you don't get those years back and you don't get that time back. And so if I can build memories with them, then I'm going to do it. And BMX is a beautiful way to be able to do that.
I love that. Yeah, and I will say that BMX is a huge part of my memory with my dad, and
Right.
bikes have always been the kind of a focal point of our relationship.
Mm,
And now when we were just out in Southern California, we met my dad in Southern California. And when I go to Northern California in September for another old school BMX race, my dad's going to meet me there.
love it.
And my dad came out to Tulsa, Oklahoma, middle of May for an old school BMX race. And so, but he gets to do that not only with his son, but with his grandkids.
Ah, right.
And so it just creates a depth on so many levels. And they get to race with dad and grandpa and who they call G-Paw, and they get out on the track together. And it's really neat because it does create, I mean, January 3 times I saw my dad. I saw him in Christmas. We went back to Washington to visit
Mm,
over Christmas. But then the weekend after that, I met my dad flew. I drove up to Rock Island, Illinois. We met there for a BMX race. And then the weekend after that, I met him in Southern California for a BMX race. And then the weekend after that, we were actually back in Southern California for a freestyle BMX book release event.
wow. Wow.
And so, I mean, to say that BMX has kept us together would be an understatement, because
Yeah.
it's been neat. And then one of the things that I talk about is like, you guys have done, your son's been kind of driving your train a little bit of like the momentum and like, I want to go and I want to win and get these things. And there's a lot of people that I will talk to, like for the first like year and a half, I typically don't encourage people to get into like the provincial or state races in
Sure.
the States.
Yeah.
Because obviously, it's a lot of standing around, a lot of
Yeah.
sitting around. And at that younger age, sometimes it's hard to keep their attention. But the difference that I find is that, and that I have a really hard time with, is the parent that is driving the kid or the kid that is driving the parent.
Sure.
And in your kid, or in your case, your kid is saying, let's go, dad, I want to do this. And
Yeah.
for you to say, all right. But then unfortunately, there are a lot of unhealthy situations where it's like trying to live vicariously.
We saw some of
And
that. Yes.
and you're just, and what I constantly will talk about is, in 20, 30 years, I want my kids to love their bikes. And I want
Mm,
them to look back at this as being some of the best memories with their dad. Or at least great memories, maybe not the best, but great memories.
right.
I don't want them to look back. I mean, I don't care if they're racing, they could be mountain biking, they could be on beach cruisers. I don't care. I want them to like
Yeah.
enjoy their bikes. I don't want them to look back and go, man, I just couldn't earn my dad's love because I
Yes.
wasn't fast enough.
Yes. So important. Yeah.
Um,
I love that you bring that up. And I think I'm going to guess your audience aren't people like me, But if somehow someone hears this, like, I don't want another parent who's considering getting their kid into BMX or considering doing it with their kid, like, oh, well, but it sounds dangerous and I don't want to travel around and it sounds like there's so much and there's so much and what if he gets hurt and what blah 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 blah. Like, what I encourage people is, I honestly thought, and if this is all it was Monday nights and Wednesday nights at our local track, and that was it. That was good enough for me. Like, I'm just happy to spend time with my kid. And if it means that my kid was going to be the slowest kid there, but he did it with a big ass smile on his face, you know, I don't care. The fact, though, that he wanted to do whatever he did, I'm just there along the ride to support him. But I wouldn't want someone who's maybe not in the BMX world thinking it's kind of an all or nothing. Either you buy the trailer or you don't. Like, it's if it all it is you go to your local track once a week and you get to spend time with your kid and have fun and make friends and meet. And yes, there's going to be other people at the local track who are like, you going to the next race? You going to that thing? Did you buy your tickets? Did you work out your hotel? There's going to be people like that. That's cool. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like, I think that's what I love about the sport as well, is if you want to take it far and you want to travel and you want to do these things and you want to commit to it, there's an opportunity. If you want to go once a week and make it a local track thing, and that's as far as you go, and you never buy anything but the old bike off of Marketplace, and that's just it, that's okay too. And I think that's an important distinction to make because again, I'm talking to some of the other dads out there. I'm like, just race. He goes, I don't want to like commit. I'm like, you don't have to. Just have a good time. It's a ton of fun, and you get to meet some great people. So whatever that's worth for anybody who might be considering it. I know we talked a lot about competition and all this. Maybe or maybe not, but both are okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's health in both. I'm not opposed to somebody going out with their kid and pushing it and going and racing more and more and more. The line just, I think, becomes, you got to be careful of like, why is your kid racing? And your kids are so easily swayed that, I mean, one of the situations we were at a mountain bike event here in Tulsa. What was that? End of November. And the kids had this race. It ended up being kind of a goofy 1-lap race. And I had talked to the kids and I said, Oliver, do you want to go down and practice on the track? And he goes, no, I don't really want to. And I said, okay. So then he was super excited to race, just didn't want to go and practice. And he had ridden all day the day before. It just hadn't ridden the course. Well, it was a downhill and then a big like 180-degree turn and back uphill. So he had gears, so he's gonna have to shift. Not super proficient with the shifting. He always kind of has to remind himself which one's higher and which one's lower. So he comes around the corner and he ends up pushing his thumb down or anyway, he shifts the wrong way. And it gets him, and like 3 kids pass. I don't even know if there were trophies. It was just a goofy race. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, he ends up like kind of having this look on his face. And apparently the look on my face was, he read it as disappointment. It wasn't supposed to be. It wasn't supposed to be at all. And I said, hey, how's it going? And I walk over and he's crying, and my wife's sitting there and he's crying, and he's like, I'm worried that Dad's upset with me. And I said, oh, buddy, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm not upset with you. I said, I guess I was bummed for you because you wanted to do better and you didn't do as good as you wanted to.
Sure.
And so I was thinking about that, and maybe that's what my face was saying. So I'm really sorry. But it was like, in that moment, it wasn't intentional, but he thought that I was disappointed. Right. And so quickly a kid can internalize that and go, okay, if I want my dad to love me, I've got to win. Right. And I've seen that, and I'm sure you've seen some of that. You will see more of that. Is this story? There was a woman at the finish line. I was standing manning a vendor booth, and finish line Saturday afternoon after her race, she comes over and the kid's like 12 years old, goes, yeah, you did it. Like, just screaming, so excited. He looks embarrassed. And I'm thinking, like, at that age, yeah, I'd be super embarrassed about my mom doing that. Yeah. less than 24 hours later, it's Sunday's race. So probably, I don't know, 19, 20 hours later, he comes across the line, did not do well, did not make his main. And she's like, what is wrong with you? You had it. You were right there. And I just thought, that kid's going to grow up.
Yeah, it's not going to help.
They're going to hate their bike and they're going to hate you.
Right.
Because he's clearly not good enough. And your reaction is up here or it's down here.
Right.
And so it's not that I have a problem with racing more. I think, my thing is we just got to be careful of how we approach it, because it is a sport where you could go all into football, all into baseball, all into hockey, whatever it is. You can go all in, and the season is this big. The BMX season is 11 and a half months long. And it can burn out families emotionally, financially, relationally. Like, you just have to be careful with it.
Yeah.
And that being said, I think it can hurt. Anything can hurt people. I think it can hurt people, but I also think it's one of the best sports that kids can be involved in.
I agree. And I'm living proof of it.
Yeah. But anyway, Nicholas, thank you so much for this. I am so grateful. I know that you were a little surprised when I reached out and wanted to have a conversation with you about this subject matter.
With the most amateur BMXer ever on your show.
It is perfect. No, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I love being able to talk to somebody who, I've been seeing your posts about your going to the track with your son and seeing pictures and videos and things. And I just thought it was super cool when you got on a bike and somebody that has, that is coming through and is seeing things from a perspective. You also have an entrepreneurial mindset, and that's kind of why I wanted to have the conversation with you. And anyway, it's just been really fun. I'm very appreciative.
Oh, I'm glad we had this conversation. I gotta be honest with you, I'm like even more stoked to get back on my bike and get on some tracks and have some fun with it. So I appreciate you reigniting even more so. Like the nationals did it, the local races did it, and this conversation just got me stoked to keep pursuing the sport.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited about that. And then, in just a few days, really, you'll have an episode to show people and be like, see, I'm a name in this sport now.
Well, who knows? Maybe a few years down the road, I might be beating them 7-year-olds in the cruiser class. So we'll see.
Oh yeah. And then you'll be like, yep, I'm beating you and I've got a podcast. So take that, 7-8-year-old.
You got some work to do, little one. Yeah.
You just have to, I think the biggest goal is you just have to get to a spot where you can beat your son for as long as possible and then be able to see how long you can hold him off for.
Yeah. I'm working on that still. We'll get
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Nicholas.
Jay, for course.
Absolutely. Have a great day. And thanks for the conversation.
Thanks. All right. All the best.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.